Welcome back to the Makers Podcast. Brandon, how are you?
Good as always. How are you?
Oh, well, thanks. And today we're joined by a good friend of mine I've known for a couple of years, Steve Farrugia from ShareTree. Welcome, Steve, to the Makers Podcast.
Oh, fantastic to be here, guys.
Look, how about you kick us off with what ShareTree is all about, and we'll go from there. And let's get us started.
Well, ShareTree is quite unique. To start with, what we are is actually a registered charity, but we're not a traditional charity. We're what's called charity as a service. What that means is we provide professional services to organisations, and what ordinarily would flow into people's profits and shareholding dividends actually flows back to the community. And where we have an impact is through mental health and character development and culture development, specifically targeting schools and also underprivileged people in society.
Wow, okay. And look, I've come to know you more from the software side. I mean, I'm in tech and, I view ShareTree as a tech company given the nature of what you create. So maybe you can expand on what the technology aspect is of what you've just described.
Yeah, there's a few parts. I'll start actually with the structure of our charity. So we're a group of companies that are social enterprises. Mm-hmm. So we invest in impact startups, and those entities are half for profit and half for community impact.
Okay.
So the profits flow back from those entities. There's 4 in our group now, and Minter Allison's just helped us develop a valid constitution and shareholders agreement to share that with all Australians.
Wow. Okay.
So those dividends from those companies flows back to the charity, plus the revenue that we make from the services we provide to the community.
Okay, wonderful. And what are these services you're describing?
Yeah, so the main 2 areas of impact for us are mental health and character and culture. And I'll start with mental health. And I'll share with you guys actually a really intriguing fact. Did you know where the first place on planet Earth was to create law around seatbelt usage?
Melbourne,
Australia.
We only know that because when we created the trailer for the show, we wanted to showcase all the weird and wonderful inventions.
That's true.
Yeah, and it was hard to believe, wasn't it?
It was.
We're punching above our weight, aren't we?
100%. And it wasn't any other state. It was actually right here in Melbourne.
Wow.
So we were the first in the world to innovate that in 1970. Do you know when the awareness came out about the benefit of seatbelts?
Oh, geez, what did it be, like 90?
1950.
1950.
So there was 20 years of awareness until we as humans acted upon it.
Yep.
And we were the bravest place on the planet to do it. And the pain of that, I remember it as a kid, like it's uncomfortable. I was like, I've got to put the seatbelt on? Mm-hmm. Why should I put this on? I'm fine. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what mental health is in the technology we made. It's a very similar analogy.
Yep.
Because you don't appreciate it until you need it. Mm-hmm. So the death rates used to be 3,700 fatalities a year in Australia from road accidents in 1970.
Yep.
And the seatbelt halved fatalities. Mm-hmm. And it's now at 1,100 a year, which is still 1,100 too many, right?
Yep.
And other technologies, ABS and anti-collision and all of these things have helped a lot. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the mental health story, in 1970, 2,000 lives were being lost. And now we lose more than 3,200 lives a year. And they're increasing. Mm-hmm. And 3/4 of them are men. Mm-hmm. So the men's mental health story, but for all people, is really something we need to tackle and improve.
Yep.
And that's what the technology Emotional Pulse that we developed was all about.
Okay. So what does Emotional Pulse do? Does it identify people who may be in need of early intervention and help, or what does it do as a technology?
Excellent question. Self-awareness is really the biggest benefit that we discovered, even though it wasn't the intention of building it. Mm-hmm. So it just asks people to check in every day, like putting on your seatbelt, to be aware of where you're at, and to share that with people that you authentically trust, to build lines of connection. We know through Black Dog's research and other researchers, the primary cause of suicide is actually disconnection. A loss of connection and purpose are the primary contributors. And the very last thing people lose is hope. And you can see that emotions are your leading indicators. Mm-hmm. Most people are waiting to actually understand and see the outward signs when we can't regulate anymore.
Sure.
Which is way too late, and I start taking days off work. I start having outbursts at work. I break down. I start showing emotions through my logic. That's too late. We're actually way down the path by then, and we're actually about to collide. It's too late to put your seatbelt on then, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what Emotional Pulse does is it's actively just checking in with you. It's one check-in a day, just to truly reflect and share it with people you authentically trust.
Yep.
Now, it de-identifies you, and that data can flow in confidentially to the employer. So they can use this data then to feed strategies and interventions to shift, the mental health well-being of the team, but also foster connections between people.
Yep.
They're the two primary things.
So I'm guessing the primary delivery method is maybe an app on your phone, or is it an application on the computer, or you're saying working with organisations, they have distributed workforces. How does an organisation adapt your technology and then distribute it to their employees?
Yeah, so like the seatbelt, people resisted putting it on until it became law. For 20 years, people did not actually reap the benefit of that technology.
Yep.
And again, first place in the world to legislate psychosocial risk hazard compliance, Australia.
Yep.
So employers now have an obligation, and there's two ways that they can access that: through the app, which makes it mobile for the individual. But what's better for engagement is really to integrate that then with your IT systems.
Yep.
And that's where we find engagement becomes the best. The second part to that is that the employers are actually liable. So they have a responsibility to check in with people.
Yep.
And it is their right to ask their employees to tell them how they're feeling,
Yep.
but do it in a confidential way. And we provide that. We're the only software that provides that solution.
Wow, amazing. And you're saying it anonymously asks you, or at a certain time of the day or week, how you're doing.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, and for those listening and watching on YouTube, we'll put up a graphic of what the emotional pulse looks like. It's essentially a matrix of different colours. Do you want to describe it more?
Yeah, so it's an array. What we did is we took some 64 emotional states and we mapped them to two axes. The x-axis is mapping what we call pleasantness. We don't call it positive and negative emotions, because every emotion is really a gauge for us. If we're in the negative, what they call negative, unpleasant state, it's telling us our boundaries are being crossed, or our rituals and our patterns are not serving our health needs. And the other axis, the y-axis, is our energy. Psychologists call that valence and arousal.
Yep.
We feel that's a little bit of BS. It's a bit too far-reaching to use those terms, but that's the technical terms. We call them pleasantness and energy.
Yeah.
So you have this array, if you guys are feeling low energy and unpleasant, what types of emotions do you think you'd feel?
Frustration.
Anger.
Yeah.
Oh, that's high energy. Yeah.
It's high energy.
Yes.
So unpleasant, high energy, anger.
Yeah.
Feeling low
yeah.
about yourself.
Yeah. So depression, sadness is all in that zone.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you have pleasant, high energy emotions, things like happiness,
Yep.
excitement, ecstaticism.
Yep.
And then you've got low energy, pleasant emotions,
Yep.
contentment, blissfulness,
Yep.
reflection.
Yes. Yep. And out of all the emotional pulses you've collected data on across all organisations and industries, is there a delta where most people comfortably sit most of the time? I mean,
Depends on the individual. So
Okay.
we call it your home state, and everyone's home state's different. So there's two parts to that. Understanding your own mental health is what is my home state and what is my range of emotions.
great. Yep.
So we don't want robots. That's unrealistic.
Yep.
What we want is what we call resilient bounce. To be aware of a shift from your home place
Yep.
as quick as possible, and the AI feeds into that with personalized confidential insights. It says, oh, you're tracking in a place that you don't normally go.
Sure.
And then it will prompt you more frequently what's going on.
Yeah.
And then when you're there, it will give you insights about how to get back and prompt you to reach out for help if you're on a cascading slide that's dangerous.
Yeah. Wow. Real-time analysis of how your team's doing, checking in with them. It seems completely obvious to me.
Well, the question I've got is, have you built this recently, like just around the time AI has kind of come to the fore, or did you build before AI?
We had paper-based systems that we used to use for culture strategies for our clients pre-COVID.
Yep.
And during COVID, a lot of the leaders that were actually really well connected with the team started reporting, I've got no means to check in anymore. I've lost my primary means of observation, of conversation, and it feels a little inauthentic for me to be ringing everyone every day and inefficient to check in with people, and nor is it confidential. So during COVID, it was born, and we created this technology, but we went a bit further and we suggested to the leaders that were part of that, that you will get actually a lot more honest data, because once we introduce confidentiality, you're going to get genuine feedback from people. And it's exactly what happened. So it becomes a reflection for the leader. Not all leaders are ready for that. Some of them don't want to know the truth and they'll just avoid it, but it will end up biting them on the tail end with mental health claims.
Yep.
So did it get built sort of in and around as AI exploded? Or the reason I ask is because there's a lot of established people out there like Culture Amp and other businesses that have built amazing unicorn products, but they've built having the ability to leverage AI.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you may have been able to create a bit of a competitive advantage in some ways, because you won't have to go back and rebuild from
Absolutely.
ground up.
It's integrated. So the AI was there before it emerged with GPT, but it was already emerging, so we were building for it.
Yeah.
And now with version 2.0, we're actually going to go for a fundraising round to help scale.
Yep.
It's in 118 different countries at the moment. We've got thousands of regular users, but we're ready to actually scale this to the next level.
Wow. So that's the emotional pulse side. What's the Karametrics offering? How does it work? And how does it differentiate between the emotional pulse technology and what's Karametrics?
Well, it's one thing to be aware of your emotions. The next step reaches back to a word I used before, which is authenticity. So to be authentic with another human requires us to be aware of our character. And when we understand what strengths make us up, it helps us better connect and appreciate difference, but also work to our strengths in order to serve.
Okay.
So a lot of distress that comes from the workplace is people working inauthentically to their strengths. A lot of people chasing money, a lot of pressure that comes from parents, particularly migrant parents, to secure certain roles in society. And these people find themselves in jobs to please others or to get a paycheck.
Yes.
And that's what creates a lot of the underlying distress for people's inauthenticity about who they are, what they love, what their passions are.
Yep. So Karametrics is a model to help better understand or distill the characteristics of an individual, and using it to identify and highlight what are your strengths and weaknesses. Would that be a fair assessment?
Not weaknesses, so it's a measure of strengths. So we've got thousands of traits within each of us, but we're naturally attuned to use certain traits when opportunities or challenges present.
Yep.
And with a 10-minute assessment, we can see with a 96% accuracy exactly what are your trait sets. And with the Character 360, so you can ask through lines of trust for feedback from people about what are my strengths and how are they showing up.
Okay.
And it tells us whether they're congruent and aligned. So I used to have the strength, I still have the strength of purposefulness. That's one of my strengths, to work with purpose, to inspire purpose in others. But what I found was I wasn't actually bringing that to the workplace. And when I did the 360, it showed up.
Right.
It's quite interesting, learning from my own tools that we're developing.
So you say in 10 minutes it can make this assessment. To take us through what that looks like. What does someone undertake in 10 minutes to determine these
So
things?
in 10 minutes, there's multiple parts to the assessment. It's a science-based assessment. It will look at strength sets in comparison. So are you more courageous or are you more wise?
Okay.
Are you more about leadership or are you more about self-discipline? Are you more about determination or are you more about purpose? So you keep making these comparisons between 12 different character sets or archetypes, which we know make up the human psyche and the human existence.
Okay. So it's almost like a survey-based process to walk me through a set of pre-canned questions that then highlight or uncover what my true north is. Would that be right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you get this, we call it a character archetypes profile, and then you can see your strength set. Yep. There's AI already integrated to that. It will give you an insight onto how that makeup comes together, where your challenges might be, where your strengths might be, where you best might serve community.
Yeah.
And if you do the 360, then it validates. It tells you whether those strengths are showing up or not.
Yep.
Gives you a development plan about how do I cultivate that to move forward.
Got it. Right.
Tremendously powerful for self-development,
Yep.
for teamwork, for relationships. We use it a lot in relationship coaching where there's conflict in the relationship.
Yep.
We use it a lot for recruitment as well. So we get people to describe a role and then recruit for role.
Yes. I was going to say recruitment would be a big one, an obvious one for finding the right candidate. Yeah.
What we're most excited about is the school space.
Yep. Okay.
So the question that they ask kids, and what did you get asked when you were doing your careers advisory at school?
What I want to grow up to be.
It's a long time ago.
A fireman or a policeman? No.
I don't know, but I remember I gravitated towards a degree in a career that I thought would be safe because I didn't know, I didn't go and do what I really wanted to do straight away. I hope that makes sense. So I just did a Bachelor of Business Marketing, generic degree. That doesn't answer your question. But so what did the careers person say? I think they said, I don't know, because I won the award at school for like the best all-rounder. So I was okay at a lot of different things, but they didn't help me in deciding what should I do.
Yeah.
But what did they usually say back then?
Yeah. So you get pressure a lot from migrant parents. You can be anything you
really?
want as long as
it's a doctor, or a lawyer,
teacher, or an engineer. Yeah.
Well, on that point, I was going to ask you, mate. On LinkedIn, you've done a Bachelor of Education, Engineering and Management, and then from 1975 to 2022, you've been mastering the evolution of life, the School of Life and Virtues. But I want to ask, mate, how does a Bachelor of Ed manufacturing student, you sound like a psychologist, right? Like, how do you stumble into mental health and develop such a path and career there? Like, was there a moment or something that happened in your life that really made you go, this is the path I want to go on?
Yeah, it wasn't really a defining moment. I've always had an interest to understand how things work. It's actually written in my character makeup.
Yeah.
And solve problems. And I had a real life experience trauma as a child. And that led me to the path of discovering myself. And at the end of that process, I really realized this is actually something of value to all people. Now, I went into my engineering degree because I like to solve problems and engineers are great at solving problems. But along the way during engineering, the one problem that was most challenging, because I was working full-time already at Bosch, and the one problem that we could design structures and build spreadsheets and calculate mathematical outcomes, but we could not predict what was going to happen with people. So I was like, right, I will take all the electives around HR, psychology, and business, because I like entrepreneurship, and discover what this human condition, this human makeup is. So that was the early interest, which stemmed from learning about myself. So that's what brought us to the end. But back to the question, what people ask is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it really drafts people to think about a role, and parents are pressuring people then towards roles, and some kids are drawn to roles based on money. But the real question you want to ask kids at that important stage of life are, what are your strengths? What is your purpose? And how can those strengths serve that purpose? And if we get kids working on that, you're going to see a hell of a lot more entrepreneurs coming into the mix, because we don't even know the jobs of the next 10 years.
Yeah. And I was wanted to touch on that, how much, and it's more of a broader question, how much mental health, the issues of mental health, or what are the drivers around mental health, are underpinned by our rapid acceleration into a technological adolescence as a society, even though it's very much upon us and it dictates a lot of the things we choose to do in our lives. How much is that contributing directly to mental health at scale?
I think it's something like, don't quote me, but it's a really large number, but I think it's 84% of all mental health issues emerge between age 14 and 21, which is a specific cycle of evolution called the courage phase, where it's imbalanced. It's all about outcomes and it's not morally balanced.
Yes.
Getting into the psychology of barometrics, but it is a distinct phase, but it's also where we're forced to choose our career path. So the part we're most passionate about, even though we do all this culture and character work for the corporate sector, is to take those funds and give them to the schooling sector and help children have more clarity and more confidence about who they are and how they want to serve. And that directly impacts mental health issues.
So someone working at the epicenter of all of this, I mean, what's your opinion on the government's position on, banning?
Governments are always interesting machines. They are kind of lagging behind. We recently had a little setback, and that's part of business. So we applied for the mental health menu, which is a Victorian grant for all public schools. And unless you're listed on that menu, you can't actually get funds to support schools. For us, it's a huge setback because we're working with a large number of schools on these programs.
Yep.
And because we weren't selected for that menu, because we're emerging technologies, not university validated technology,
Got it.
it means now we can't serve those schools unless we have an alternative
Partner,
means.
maybe to partner with?
Yeah, if we're trying to get corporates to directly sponsor. That's one of the things that we're brainstorming. Instead of just taking the funds that would be to profit and directing them ourselves, we're going to ask corporates to help choose a local school. And while we're helping your organisation thrive, succeed and improve culture,
Yep.
how about connecting to the school and funding their program as well?
Yep.
And even beyond that, if people would like to mentor kids, what we do is we match them based on character strengths.
Yeah. I think it sounds like that's the way you would probably approach it. And I think you'd probably have a lot of success with that path as well. So
We hope so. I mean, every challenge, as your entrepreneurs know as well,
Yeah.
every challenge for an entrepreneur just creates new pathways.
Yep.
It's just about managing what's the best for us.
Yep.
What's been the most challenging part for you to build a business like this, given that there's so many moving parts? There's tech, there's people, there's a psychology element, there's the science, there's the people part as well. But what's been the biggest challenge for you, do you reckon?
The greatest challenge has always been for me splitting my time between the things that I love. So I do this work for purpose. In fact, I haven't even earned a wage for the last year. I've just been contributing. I've earned enough from all the other things I've created, but I'm directly contributing because I'm driven by the purpose. And the greatest challenge is splitting that love for my purpose with the love for my family and friends. Because time is not infinite. Time is a scarce resource, one that we never get back and one we can never pay for. So it's just splitting that time to invest as much as I can into the things that I love and the people I love.
Yep. You mentioned earlier 117 countries now?
118 for emotional pulse, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how does one go about actually achieving that? What was the go-to-market strategy? Like we're going to find, is it partners you're working with in those many destinations? How does that come about?
It's mostly actually just come about organically through the app store itself and
Right.
people sharing it.
Yep.
So within the technology, we built a means for people to check in with each other.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people referring the app to other people to create what we call a buddy or a trusted pair.
Yep.
And that's sort of organically spread the technology in
Yep.
itself. Also the app store, people search for wellbeing apps. We
Yeah.
pop up to the top of that list.
Yep.
Google supports us with grants as a charity to
Okay.
help people find the benefits of what we're creating as well. So all those things have helped contribute.
Wow. And all made here in Melbourne.
All made in Melbourne.
What a fantastic export story.
I want to find out, how did you discover Steve? Have you used the product or have you interacted?
Steve and I were introduced by a mutual friend of ours who connected us during COVID. In fact, she was running a podcast, I think, at the time,
Look out.
and had us on her podcast. Hello to Rebecca if she's watching.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, and look, both being tech, we have an enterprise content management technology, and we already see sort of an increase in our technology touches everyone in the organisation. It's very horizontal, so you need everyone on board to adopt it. It's not a financial package, it's not a HR package, it's not a sales package. It's horizontal. So the challenges with that is you're dealing with all different personalities who have their own agendas. So trying to get a deal done in our space is challenging and it's time consuming. But the one thing we saw on the rise was the request from certainly C-level, but mostly driven by HR as well. We want to get more visibility into how our people are thinking and what they're doing with the content they create and share. We want to know, what's going on. And I remember saying that to Rebecca, and then Rebecca goes, and I remember Rebecca saying, well, do you know Steve Farrugia? He's building ShareTree, and it sounds a lot like what you were doing. And then it was really just a mutual introduction. So long story short, we've integrated Steve's technology into our platform, and we've had a lot of our clients, large enterprises, trialing the technology, and they've given us feedback, and I've shared that with Steve. But this has been going on, for about 2 years now. So yeah, that's how we know each other. But it's a mutual understanding, and I guess a respect of what he's built, and us seeing like it's a big gap in what we deliver, and then the onus is put on our platform to give more analytics around people analytics, like how they're doing, what they're doing, are they satisfied, all those things that come out of when you've got a piece of software that touches, in some cases tens of thousands of people. So that's how we know each other.
Love it. That's great. I guess, I mean, I haven't asked many questions here, but I'm just listening and intrigued. What's another question that comes to mind? Okay, so I'm particularly interested about how you reckon you can stimulate more entrepreneurs to come through the system. And I love the attitude of focusing on a child finding their purpose and being comfortable in that first, and then identifying their strengths. Because even in the classroom to date, like, kids are very aware of their deficiencies or their weaknesses. So can you talk me through like a typical scenario about how you could see this playing out in a classroom that it currently doesn't, where it could really get a kid becoming more alive and switched on to maybe becoming an entrepreneur or building something of their own without getting that imposter syndrome around their weaknesses?
Yeah, sure. So entrepreneurship, innovation, success, achievement, it all comes from a sense of confidence and curiosity. Like, they're the two primary ingredients for entrepreneurship. And we saw it in the basketball team I coach. We saw it in the trial schools that we run. We saw it from independent research. So when people remove their fear of trying, they succeed better. So I'll give you a real example. So I coach a basketball team. I used to coach them. I've taken a break. So we set up the basketball team. They weren't doing so well. We introduced a character-based acknowledgement system for the kids. I coached them through character, and I brought all the parents on board with that. So at the end of every game, I gave the parents the job of picking out one player, and they took turns doing it and acknowledging that child for courage. And the principle I was coaching on is that every shot that we don't take is the shot that we miss. Now, it's not about just throwing the ball away. It's about being diligent, being smart, being strategic. But when you have the shot, you take it. And we embrace that failure does not exist. It's just feedback and insight for learning. That's exactly what the acronym means. So we built these kids up to actually embrace failure as a means of growth, a necessary step. Now, when we ran the schools pilot programs for character in schools, we did a very similar thing. What we did was we armed all the teachers with what we call the language of character. And we enabled these teachers to be able to call out the character strengths in the children instead of naming the academic outcome. So you don't say, hey, you got a great result on that exam. You say, hey, I really admire the commitment, the perseverance, and the time you spent to learn that content in order to get that result. Now, what we are then psychologically pinning to ourselves is all those character traits.
Yep.
And you can't lose the character traits, but you can lose the exam result. So if you miss out the next time on the exam, you reinforce the traits again and you build them back up. But if you focus on the result, the science says that people will be scared that they won't achieve the same thing, so they regress. So coming back to your question, if we build that into people's mindset from the get-go, that's where entrepreneurship lives. And my kids are a living example of it. But my partner and I have used this concept because I've researched all the science about it. We've built it into the way that we parent our kids from the get-go. And my son, next week, in fact, we're going to Queensland. He's competing for national championships for athletics, but he's also the school captain. He's also won the all-rounder award, same as yourself, and just a good human. There's no fear of failure there. And my daughter's very similar. Also just recently won silver medal for athletics in the state, came fourth in the state for triple jump. So, but we've all got our own individual strengths.
Yep.
You know, and when you go to the sports field, it's a great analogy for learning about character. If my strengths are javelin and high jump, why in the hell would I be training my body to do long distance running? It just makes no sense at all. And that's exactly the story of character. Once we understand our strengths, then we become confident to engage with them.
Yep.
And purpose just tells us where we're going to use those strengths.
It's just so powerful just listening.
It is, mate. You've done a lot of self-development. Sound like you'd be a really good parent.
Thanks, mate.
Would your kids say that?
Yeah.
They would.
We test them out. We normally say, hey, are you happy with your name? Are you happy with who you are? And you're happy with who we are?
Yeah.
And we normally get authentic yeses.
Occasionally you get them to do a 360. It all comes out.
So, Steve, how do people find you? Like, do you want to give us a plug for the website?
Sure, yeah. If people are interested in really moving the needle on their character and culture and their mental health, whether it's for their family, for their school, for their corporation, reach out to us either directly on the website at sharetree.org.
Sharetree.org.
Sharetree.org. Or contact me directly on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So you can find me, Stephen Farrugia, on LinkedIn. Reach out. I'm not one of those people, even though I've got lots of followers, I will respond to your messages.
Yep.
But the very best thing is to contact us over the website, because it will get logged to the team and it won't get into the bottleneck of my communication.
Cool.
Love it. Great to have you on,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for
Great
coming
to
on,
hear your
Steve.
story.
And thanks for sharing ShareTree and the story.
No, really grateful to be here. What you guys are doing is really amazing, because the story of entrepreneurship in Australia is one that needs to be told.
I agree.
They said it actually last night on Shark Tank that some of the best innovations that they've ever seen come out of Shark Tank Australia. And we are a really progressive society.
Where we punch well above our weight, and I know it's an overused acronym or phrase, but we really do. I mean, for a small population on the bottom end of the planet, we do a lot and achieve a lot. And in fact, I'm off to the States a few weeks to go and visit some clients, and I remember being there last time, and one guy turned to me and said, "Why are we buying software from Australians?" And it's like, well, do you have Wi-Fi in the office? Do you have Wi-Fi in the building? They look at me like I'm an idiot. Going, what do you mean? It's like, well, Wi-Fi was invented in Australia. And he just like, what? So we do a lot down under. So,
Yeah.
But thanks again, Steve.
We just hope that the time it takes for them to find the benefit of the seatbelt, 1950 to 1970, is something that we can shorten when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Steve.
Thank you.